Taiwan is known for its semiconductor industry. As the world's foundry with over 90% of high-end chips made in Taiwan. Today we will explore how the country has built its complete chip-making ecosystem from scratch and how it plans to maintain its competitive edge amid intensifying U.S. China tech competition. Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks, covering the latest news and global analysis from a Taiwan perspective. I'm Rath Wang. Joining us for an exclusive interview today is Colley Hwang, president of Digitimes. President Hwang is a renowned expert on global technology trends. He is also a frequent speaker at giant tech firms and research institutions, visiting major cities in Europe, the Americas, China, and other countries within Asia. With almost 4 decades of experience, President Hwang founded Digitimes, a trusted source on the semiconductor, electronics, computer, and communication industries. He is also the author of Asian Edge, on the front end of ICT world, disconnected ICT supply chains, new power plays unfolding, and more. A very warm welcome to the show today, President Hwang. From AI to 5G, there's global demand for semiconductors, and it's been increasing, especially as we've seen the U.S. China compete for chips. With this, what challenges do you see in the Taiwan semiconductor industry going forward?
Taiwan started from scratch in mid of 1980s, especially. Taiwan tried to produce more PCs. Then we established a manufacturing infrastructure, not only for PC, but also for mobile phone or other devices. Then we create demand of semiconductor. So you mentioned about semiconductor industry of Taiwan, we need to identify some different perspectives. The first one, people aware the importance of Taiwan's foundry services, especially from TSMC, UMC, and some other companies. They run the business very successfully. But people didn't know Taiwan still is the number 2 IC design industry in the world. We contribute 24% of the worldwide IC design industry output. This is also very important. So when you mention about people, when they talk about the Taiwan semiconductor industry, they always focus on TSMC. But I'd like to emphasize another thing, is ICT supply chain. In the first 3 quarters, year 2022, and the top 30 electronic manufacturing services company, they create $425 billion, and 72% of them, they created and produced by Taiwanese makers. So Taiwan creates huge demand of semiconductors. Then we have the opportunity to build our infrastructure for semiconductor industry today.
And we also have, we see Japan, the US, and other countries investing more and more in the industry.
Yeah.
Do you feel that could threat Taiwan's competitive edge in the industry?
Fight with who? But more important things, we work together. Just as I mentioned, we produce a lot of PC servers, mobile phone, and we create huge demand, not only for Taiwanese company, but also for the companies like NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, others. So more important thing is Taiwan is part of, or important part of the worldwide supply chain. So we create and we co-work with other companies. So you cannot say we fight with Japan or we fight with American companies. No, we are part of it. We are part of the worldwide supply chain.
So more investments and more companies and countries having interest in chips is actually good for Taiwan because it creates more opportunities.
Absolutely. We can predict that in the coming 2 years, we cannot expect the growth rate like last 2 or 3 years. It's impossible because the market demands more stable, fragmented. So we need to think about in the recession stage, how to invest. And we are very happy to know countries like Japan, Germany, America, they try to invest more, but they need leading technologies. As you know, Taiwan has cutting-edge technology, especially for manufacturing. So the most of the advanced technology now still keep in Taiwan, and I believe so. I believe TSMC or UMC need to work with other countries. But in the recession stage, people need to know how to get returned. But Taiwan has a methodology or good approach or technology leading in this field. So people come to Taiwan to find Taiwan partnership. And Taiwan also need to think about decentralized manufacturing system. For example, today you can imagine the countries like Vietnam, India, they try to produce electric vehicle. So they will create demand by themselves. And in case of the supply chain, they can work with Taiwan, but also they can create more opportunities for semiconductor or component needs. Then we can work with them together.
You talked about fragmentation, and we've seen the U.S. with its CHIPS Act and to move supply chains outside of China and building its own supply chains. And you also talked about partnerships.
Yes.
How do you see U.S. and Taiwan, you're working together in building new supply chains ex-China?
Actually, today, U.S. and Taiwan work together is the best formula in this field. More than 65 or 68% of the TSMC revenue still derived from American-based companies like NVIDIA, Intel, AMD, or Qualcomm. So they subcontract to Taiwan. We just produce for them. I always say that Taiwan is a harmless partner. We work with other countries, other companies, but we create value for them. Otherwise, they don't need to come to Taiwan in a small island. They don't need to come to Taiwan. So I just say Taiwan has opportunity, but we are lucky. As I say, I come back to Taiwan in 1985. That year was the first year of Taiwan high-tech industry development because Taiwan tried to produce IBM compatible PCs in the very beginning stage. Because 1985 was a year of Microsoft launched Windows. From that year on, we have the platform. You know what MIT stands for?
Made in Taiwan.
No, not only that. In our field, we say Microsoft, Intel, and Taiwan.
Wow.
Because we co-create the environment or infrastructure for high-tech industry. Then we produce notebook PCs. And do you know that Taiwan produces about 80% of the worldwide notebook PCs for global demands? But we need to produce those products not only in Taiwan, but also in China. Without China, we don't have the mass production capability. We need producers, we need workers, work for them. But today I know the industry get into the new stage, as I mentioned, decentralized manufacturing system. It's also related with the regional markets. Most of the semiconductor now we export to China because China is a so-called world factories. They did true, but we need to diversify, not only because the industry perspective, but also the political, geopolitical, and also with the local demands or local employment. So if we can produce iPhone in Zhengzhou, China, we need 300,000 people work in the factory. But it's possible for us to think about maybe 100,000 in India, another 80,000 in Mexico or other countries. So that's good for everyone. This is fair. So Taiwan is just a partner. It requires to diversify this kind of manufacturing system for worldwide demand. So as I always say that, Taiwan is a hub. That is true because we have the very well-organized infrastructure. That's good for everyone. So emerging countries like India, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, even Mexico or Slovakia, if they want to build their own infrastructure, the best way is co-work with Taiwan because Taiwan has experience. Most of the mass producers, their gross margin is not high. Not high also means for you don't have room for error. So in he produce the product with the best efficiency, low cost, manufacturing, and management. That is quite quick, quite picky and difficult. So Taiwan accumulate this kind of experience as long as 30, 40 years already. So you know Foxconn, right? Do you know which year Foxconn started up? 1974.
1974.
So almost for 50 years already. So you think we start from scratch. We do it step by step. Then we have the infrastructure. You know how many listed companies in Taiwan from electronic industry? 820 some this year. I mean year 2023 even. But you know how big is the industry revenue last year? Even we only count listed company. almost $1 trillion US. This is a big deal. So we have a $200 billion US from our finance system to help them to finance, to run the working capital, something like that. So we have a very special environment and experience for that kind of things.
Speaking of Foxconn, it became the #1 investor in Thailand, and making
Yes.
Taiwan itself being the #1 foreign investor in Thailand with
Not only Thailand,
electronic vehicles.
but also India, Indonesia, they need them. Just example, personally, I'm acquainted with the chairman, Yang Liu. He's my good friend. And I know this company last year, year 2021, their revenue as big as $220 billion about. There is only Foxconn Precision. If you count other satellite companies together, I believe their revenue as big as $300 billion.
They have a massive juggernaut in China.
Yes.
And now that they're going to Thailand, you mentioned India. What are their other target markets? Is the U.S. also one, as we've seen TSMC?
Absolutely. They will go America, they will go Europe. It's about centralized manufacturing. It's also about regional market as well. So there's very quite nature things.
So you don't see Taiwan talent going out and diluting Taiwan's competitive advantage?
No. Don't say that. We need to co-work with other countries' talent together. Not only for Taiwan. We need to go Japan. We need to go even Korea. We need to work with them. Do you know we have a company called ASE? This company is the biggest packaging and testing company of the world. They're a Taiwanese company, but they have a factory in Paju, Korea, big one. So there is a national, international issues. And as I mentioned, Taiwan, we are harmless partner. We need to work with other countries. Don't just think we want to take everything. Taiwan is a 23 million population country, small country, very small one. So we need to work with other countries and leverage the talents, even from Germany, Spain, or other countries.
Speaking of Korea, Samsung is the #1 semiconductor maker, but Apple is asking TSMC to make its MR glasses. Do you feel in the next few years, TSMC could become the #1 semiconductor maker in the world?
Not in the coming years. Now they are the #1. They are #1 already. From third quarter of year 2022. So they become the #1. But it doesn't matter because, they focus on different sub-industries. The overlapping business only for foundry business. Taiwan and Korea try to build or develop semiconductor industry in 1980s. And Korea focus on memory ICs. Taiwan focus on foundry and the design and logic IC. This is different. So today, absolutely, we need to consider the future technology emergence, like in memory computing. So in the memory, semiconductor memory, they have the computing power. There is a new trend. We need to think about how to co-work with memory ICs. So there is also a room for Taiwanese company work with Japan, because like Kyosha, Toshiba, those companies, they have memory technology, and they can work with Taiwan. And some companies like ROM or other companies in Japan, they also need the technology, leading technology for manufacturing. That Taiwan's very good at one.
And Korea is also a partner as well in that sense. They complement with the technology.
We buy a lot of components and memory ICs from Samsung or SK Hynix as well. But in case of the IT design, I believe Taiwan is much better than Korea. I conducted a survey about the IC design industry in Korea. The top 10 IC design houses in Korea, they only contribute 1.5% of the worldwide IC design industry. Compared with 24% of Taiwan, there is a small one. So it's about Taiwan foundry business, and it's also about Taiwan ICT supply chain. Because, companies like, MediaTek, right? Once MediaTek finish their product, they can sell to Foxconn, they can sell to Pekatron or Wistron or other companies. But in Korea, it's a little bit difficult compared with Taiwan. So we have a very good infrastructure for that kind of opportunities.
So President, can you compare a bit how Taiwan's ecosystem is different from countries say, Korea, Japan, and its competitive edge in this sense?
As you know, Taiwan is very small island. So because land is limited, so our factories mostly they are compact factory, so easy for us to communicate. So you know that 90% of the high-tech companies, their headquarters located in Taipei in the Hsinchu area. There is 1 hour distance. It's also easy for us to communicate. We are classmates or good friends for as long as 30 years.
Less than a 1 hour drive.
Yeah, yes, the 1 hour drive is very, very easy for us to. And as you know, in 1970s and 1980s, most of the young talents of Taiwan, they studied in the STEM, science, technology, and the like engineering or mathematics. So that is good for companies like TSMC, UMC. They recruit more young men, more young talents work for them. Taiwan is small. Looks like that is a disadvantage of Taiwan, but actually there is an advantage of Taiwan.
We're saying other countries, say in Japan, they're all scattered. Or saying the U.S. is a huge country. It's hard to communicate. And all.
Compared with Taiwan, they are scattered. So looks like the disadvantage, as I say, but today improve. Yeah, and there's a good advantage for us. So I teach in some universities, so it's possible for me. I teach in Taiwan University, Jiaotong University, Tsinghua University. In those of family university, easy for us to contact with us because 1 hour driving distance. So there's a good things for Taiwan too.
How does that compare with what TSMC is building in Arizona? Are they trying to build a mini ecosystem that replicates what Taiwan has?
Today, as I know, 93% of the TSMC capacity still keep in Taiwan. And I believe 3 years later, the percentage will reduce to 88% about. But in case of for long term, maybe year 2030, I believe Taiwan still can keep at least 80%. So which means we have the R&D manpower, experience, and the whole system. I believe they will still keep in Taiwan because of efficiency. Not the reason for American government wants or Japanese government wants. There is different things because efficiency-wise, we need to take this way. And I personally believe we need to invite more international talents come to Taiwan work with us.
As we've seen with ASML, with their new
we have 500 TSMC talents go to Arizona for manufacturing. But you may didn't know, more than 200 from Japan to come to Taiwan. They learn Taiwan how to produce, how to do foundry. So there's tools now in Taichung, as I know.
So you don't believe 20% going out of Taiwan will lessen Taiwan's competitive advantage in any way?
I can predict at least 10 years. We don't have any worry. Right. At least 10 years.
Speaking of worries, you mentioned earlier geopolitics and how the conflict between the U.S. and China is rising, and there are also geopolitical concerns between Taiwan and China. Do you feel if China launches a military attack on Taiwan, that will have far-whelming ramifications on Taiwan's semiconductor industry?
There will be a disaster not only for Taiwan. Absolutely, there's a disaster for Taiwan. But as I mentioned, Taiwan ICT supply chain, their revenue as big as $1 trillion. In case of the end market, their influence will be bigger than $3 trillion, $4 trillion. And for coming decades, we need to think about the opportunities from electric vehicle or IoT or even AI. So without Taiwan supply chain, the economy worldwide basis will be a disaster. And secondly, we don't need to take a longer term to think about that kind of issue, but think about Korea. Just an example. Year 2022, Korea deficit, trading deficit, as big as $50 billion. But the surplus from semiconductor is $60 billion, which means if they don't have the surplus from semiconductor, Korea trading deficit will as big as $110 billion. And Korea is a country very high external debt. So there is a challenge for Korea. If their semiconductor cannot sell to Taiwan, cannot sell to other countries, and Korea will bankrupt. They were facing the new financial challenge again. So if Taiwan Strait facing the challenges because military issue, and I believe absolutely there is a disaster for Taiwan, but also disaster for Korea, Japan, or even America, and there will be the choice for democracy and the communist.
So the devastation would be much larger than what we've seen in Ukraine with the
Much
Russian
bigger
invasion.
than we imagine now. As I mentioned, today we have 8 billion people live in the planet, and I believe at least 1 billion they got trouble about food, about financial issues, economic issues. So Taiwan is a very important anchor for everyone to think about stabilize of the worldwide economy and also stabilization of the society.
President, in your conversations with business leaders in China and also other places across Asia, how do you feel the business community is taking this threat? Do you think this could actually deter Chinese leaders in Beijing to stop any kind of military assault on Taiwan?
As I mentioned, actually, once I read the articles from Financial Times, and 11 years ago, President Obama, he met Chairman Hu Jintao in Hawaii. And President Obama talked to Hu Jintao. He said, Mr. Hu, China must play by the rules. That is true. Because absolutely, China is the second largest country in the world. I mean, in case of the GDP, in case of the economy wise, this kind of technology, China is second largest one, biggest one, most influential. But number one, number two, if they fight, not good for everyone. Then we expect a peaceful solutions could be found out. And the best way is a rule. Who creates a rule? And over past 50 years, globalization is a rule we follow up, but we just want to come back to the global regulation.
Do you see that trend going back to global regulation?
A little bit. So we need to talk to Chinese people to think about how we can work together. And even, I say, just in case China recession economy, and who can provide possible solution for Chinese people? Taiwan. Because Taiwan has experience for mass production. Also, we speak Mandarin well. And we can work with them to help them to come back. But China needs to think about how to talk to Taiwan as well. Today, it looks like most of Taiwanese people, they watch American. They want to work with America because we are democracy society. So that is true. But we need to think about China is always neighborhood for us. So we need to talk to them. We need to help them. So this is my personal opinion.
So you feel you can actually, the industry can actually work with both China and the US?
We hope so. But today, in the coming 2 or 3 years, will be very difficult.
So it's still tilted towards the US with the US.
We cannot say that because factories still keep in China. And how many percent we move out, migrate to Vietnam or India or other countries? So just example, in the coming 2 years, we believe in year 2024, about 15 to 20% of the normal PC we produce in Vietnam, 10% produced in Thailand, or 5 to 10% produced in India, or some percent will come back to Taiwan. So China can keep 60%. 60% is still very big. So we need to consider the demands, not only for market demand, but also for supply chain, like semiconductor, like PCB, connectors, or others. So there's a worldwide system. So if people can follow the rule and people can stabilize the supply chain and the people can get better return from their investment.
In the grand case where US and China competition in terms of chips specifically intensifies, how do you feel the Taiwan industry, semiconductor industry, will adjust itself to remain competitive?
Speak frankly, until today, the technology leading and Taiwan is quite much better than China. So in case of, actually, when we talk about semiconductor industry, we need two different perspectives to think about semiconductor. One is market demands, one is supply chain. That is different. In case of the market demand, only the revenue from two different sub-industries. One is the IC design industry. One is IDM. Do you know IDM? Integrated manufacturing devices. And companies like TI, like Intel, they have factories, they have design capability, which we call them IDM. And design houses, fabless companies like Qualcomm, like NVIDIA, Broadcom, and AMD, they don't have fab. So only those two companies, they have their brands, they sell their product in the market. There is a market side demand. So in case of this kind of definition, Taiwan only contributes 9.7%, less than 10%. But in case of the manufacturing, because manufacturing not only IDM, but not only IC design, but also foundry, the packaging testing, or even equipment, materials, or design tool, IP. So the industry as big as about $900 billion. So Taiwan contributes something like 17%. So there is different definition. So in case of the industry influence, Taiwan is much bigger than market demand.
Speaking of Intel, the US government's putting a lot of efforts in building up its foundry, and which TSMC has been the leader, the long leader of this. Do you feel that could influence CMC's competitiveness in any way?
I think American-based company is different from Taiwan.
In terms of their operating model, as you mentioned.
Yes, operating model is totally different. And OI basis, only TSMC has the power, power about the finance, about the manpower, about the capacity to create very stable expanding. And just example, last year, TSMC contribute, they invest about 52% of their revenue into capex, capital expense. So the 52% is very big. You know, year 2022, I believe TSMC revenue will be about $77 billion. And they invest more than half into capex. And no any countries, no any company in the world can do the same thing. Even Intel say they will cut off their employee, they will lay off about 10%, something like that.
That's to do with U.S. operating models being more short term.
Yeah, they try to cost down. They try to streamline their business operation. But in Taiwan, TSMC still say we want to expand because they have the market demand and also CC way.
And you see that increasing going forward.
Yeah, he told me that every investment we need to consider 2.5 years for long-term consideration, not only for next year, next month, something like that. So year 2022, 23, I believe TSMC capex will be bigger than 40% of the TSMC revenue. And you know that TSMC revenue still 3 times, 4 times than Samsung in foundry business. So which means when Samsung want to consider to compete with TSMC, they need to invest 150% of their revenue into foundry. Otherwise, they don't have the opportunity.
And you don't see that happening anytime soon.
It's impossible. Not only money, but also equipment or manpower to consider that kind of competition.
Speaking of next year, what opportunities do you see for the chip industry in Taiwan?
And I believe year 2023-24 will be another good year for everyone.
For the entire world.
Entire world, not only Taiwan. But we are lucky, fortunately, over 2 years, we made a lot of profit. You know, over 2 to 3 years, year 2021 to 22, 23, 22. And many Taiwanese companies profitable. So mostly we didn't hear too many cases about the layoff or something like that. And
one of the few countries in Asia to grow, I think, was 4%.
It's difficult for other countries, but because most of Taiwanese companies will consider the manpower shortage, so they will not lay off. I believe they will keep the same scale in the coming year, and I believe the market or demand will return. We back to normal in second half of year 2024, something like that.
But during those 2 years, you don't feel there'll be a drastic change, just a decrease in demand from overseas?
No significant change, because if you say taking a longer term, and I believe semiconductor industry not only the demands from server, from PC, from mobile phone, but also from electric vehicle, as I mentioned, or IoT, or even AI servers, data center. We have a lot of opportunities for future.
In terms of electronic vehicles, as you mentioned,
not only EV, but or even satellites, very diversified. Can you believe SpaceX needs semiconductor from Taiwan? So they will create very different demands for new applications like AIoT or even metaverse.
And is this all coming from abroad, or is it Taiwan's organic industries as well?
Yeah, they will create. Even we speak frankly, even we are not working enough, work hard enough, we can create opportunities because of organic growth. There is a future industry. Every country wants the industry. Every country wants semiconductor, right? And they feel there is a national security. So they try to convince Taiwan. They try to co-work with Taiwan. So Taiwan is watching who could be the best partner for. But I believe Taiwan needs to diversify. As I mentioned and emphasized once again, I always say that regional markets, decentralized manufacturing, and even geopolitical, we need to consider work with Germany, work with Japan. And so it's not leaving Taiwan. It's about we need to work with others.
It's great you mentioned diversifying Taiwan's risks and markets. And does that mean Taiwan's companies go abroad to build factories, or is it joint ventures with other local partners where Taiwanese innovation and technology is leased to them?
When Japan talked to Taiwan, talked to TSMC, they invite TSMC to invest in Japan.
And there's a new factory there.
And the TSMC say, yes, we can transfer technology to you. You run it by yourself. But Japan say, no, we need you. So which means we have the know-how, how to run the business well. You know how many employees TSMC have today? 60,000. And about close to 10,000 are R&D engineers. So they have very good power, manpower, and they invest ecosystem. Not only invest in Taiwan, but also co-work with the companies like ASML, like Synopsys, Cadence, design tool companies. They work with Taiwan because we are the biggest investor, and we have the real original technology. We can work with the best company in the world. So there is the infrastructure we built as long as 30 years already. So you cannot talk to us in the coming 2 or 3 years. We got trouble. No, it's impossible. Especially semiconductor. Most of the semiconductor companies, the best or the earlier investment are in Japan, in America. Company like Intel. Do you know Intel launched their 4004 CPU in 1971? And then I believe that was the starting point for independent semiconductor industry in America. And in the beginning stage, companies like IBM, TI, Intel, they work with equipment, materials company very closely. So only the countries like Japan, like America, like Germany, European companies, they have the infrastructure, not only manufacturing, but also equipment, materials, work together. But Taiwan and Korea started from 1980s. So Korea focused on semiconductor, especially memory ICs. Taiwan focused on IC design and around foundry. But we don't have the power. We don't have the resources to invest in equipment or materials. So we need to work with others. So today, even China, they don't have the opportunities in the coming years to build the whole system by themselves. It's impossible. The only one way they can do, they took different approach. Not only silicon-based industry, they may do different material-based or design tool. That is possible for them, but they will be very, very difficult.
With this complete infrastructure and ecosystem, we've seen companies such as ASML come in and build a new factory. Do you feel other companies from, say, the U.S. or Europe will be following ASML?
Yeah, I believe so, because more clear Taiwan is a hub for semiconductor industry, not only Asian basis, but also global basis. And Taiwan took a very good geolocation because Taiwan, you know, if you are Filipino, if you are Vietnamese or Thailand people, if you want to go America, the best way is to go through Taoyuan Airport, not go through Hong Kong. So 1 hour shorter than
Location-wise.
Yeah, location-wise, we are the best. And Taiwan is the biggest market for equipment and materials for semiconductor. So if you build a house here, you can help. You can leverage Taiwan experience and the capability to help Japan, to help Korea, to help China, or even to Singapore. And thirdly, we have the market demand here, as I mentioned. In case of the mass producers, electronic manufacturing services, I mean Foxconn, Pegatron, Wistron, and Inventec, they're all Taiwanese company. So we have the demand, huge demand for. So only those companies, their revenue last year as big as $500 billion, which means we create $400 billion component demand. Most of them, they are semiconductor. So we have market demand, we have the manufacturing, we have design, we have infrastructure. If you don't want to co-work with Taiwan, not Taiwan ask you. You need us. But I always try to talk to Taiwanese businessmen. We need to open our eyes, work with others to help other people. We are a small country. It's impossible for us to take everything together.
The dollar amount of the value created is massive, but when investors come in, how much of the political risk do they put in terms of building a factory, or do you feel that is very minor?
Speak frankly, why companies like Apple, HP, Dell, they subcontract to Taiwan? Why they want to subcontract to Taiwan? Why they don't want to subcontract to Mexico-based company, Canadian-based company? More close, because we have the efficiency. Cost-wise, we are best, and we know how to deal with others. Do you know how many employees Foxconn Group have today? 1.3 million. Can you believe that? And in Taiwan, we have 17 companies. Their revenue bigger than $10 billion. Every companies, their employees, mostly bigger than 100,000. So Taiwan creates huge number of manpower working jobs, especially unskilled labor. We can help the countries like Malaysia, Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, other countries to create job opportunities for everyone. And there's most of the government headache about that kind of things. Taiwan can help.
So you feel in business leaders' minds, they don't really factor the political risk when they consider working with Taiwan?
If they say political risk is big as like that we imagine that, yeah, they will leave Taiwan. But I don't see that. Yeah, even in the coming 2 years, we are in the recession stage. They will work with Taiwan, or at most, they may ask Taiwan to go Europe. They may ask Taiwan to go Mexico, Malaysia, Thailand, or other countries. Okay, fine, we can do that. But we need local countries, different governments to help us to build. Otherwise, the supply chain, we get a big trouble.
President, as you mentioned, Taiwan still has at least 10 years not to worry in terms of its competitiveness. How do you feel Taiwan can maintain its competitive edge, say, in the next 20, 30 years to maintain that competitive advantage?
I want to talk to young people. Yeah, looks like, yes, in case of the e-commerce or other entertainment business, is more happy or funding for that kind of working opportunities. But Taiwan is a small country, as I mentioned, 23 million population. We need to focus. And we are so lucky. We have the industry, not only semiconductor, but we have ICT supply chain, whole system. And there is a bird on hand. We know how to handle that kind of business. Our generation, I'm the baby boomer. So our generation creates the industry. They're all my good friends, longer than 30 years already. 25 years ago, I found Digitimes. And you know how many employees Digitimes have today? More than 200. We are profitable because industry is so strong, so healthy. then we can create the best opportunities. And even we ask them to pay. You have to believe OI standard or ARPU could be the highest in the world, because we can ask people to pay us for professional information. So there is the infrastructure. So if you follow the rule, follow the mainstream industry in Taiwan, you can get opportunities for. So pay attention on how Taiwan succeeds, and even in the coming decade, we're still very competitive. I believe so.
Is there anything that's on the minds of, say, yourself and other business leaders in the industry that they want to push forward or to make the industry still profitable?
We will try to improve the efficiency from smart manufacturing. Now, we cannot expect whole Taiwanese company, when they come back to Taiwan, we can build factory and to recruit young men work for them. It's impossible. So we need to think about smart manufacturing. As I say, we need to help other countries. They all leverage Taiwan can create their whole industry, their own industry. There is good for every country. So I just say experience, finance, or you come to Taiwan for go public. This is possible, especially for manufacturing. So I just believe mass production is still the most important opportunity for Taiwan.
And to maintain it.
Yeah, maintain it. Yeah, don't spend too much time in e-commerce. There's a business for
As
Amazon.
they say, do what you do well.
Yes.
And to continue to do it.
Yes, that's what I do.
That was our exclusive interview with Colley Hwang, president and founder of Digitimes. We now hear from Alex Capri, research fellow at the Hinrich Foundation, who is also a World Economic Forum agenda contributor. Alex is an expert on global supply chains and trade. He spoke to me about the global tech supply chain realignment expected in 2023 and what role Taiwan plays in this.
2023 is going to be a year that's going to see a lot of change in the supply chains around the world for not just semiconductors, but any kind of strategic commodity. So rare earths, which are of course essential for semiconductors and other technology, and obviously microchips themselves, things that are derivatives of semiconductors, such as Wi-Fi, Internet of Everything. Virtually everything runs on semiconductors now. So 2023 is going to see a kind of hodgepodge of supply and demand vacillation. In other words, there will be cases where we will see demand going down, based on market issues such as oversupply. But then there will also be cases where there may be shortages of a particular kind of chip for a particular kind of industry, just depending once again on supply and demand issues. So I think 2023 is the year that we begin to see the effects of the restructuring of strategic supply chains around semiconductors. So as we see the CHIPS Act in the United States taking effect, we see other countries looking to attract and to shore up domestic or regional fabrication capabilities and capacity. We're going to see a prolonged phase of supply chain restructuring.
Do you see an increased role for Taiwan as this pushes forward?
When you talk about Taiwan and semiconductors, of course, you talk about TSMC, but there's a whole ecosystem in Taiwan that supports TSMC. And when we think about, for example, reshoring of fabrication, where the United States is looking to move fabrication of advanced semiconductors, but also legacy semiconductors, I think, and that's a theme that I think that we need to pick up on, because there are many specialized industries such as automotive, med tech, agri-tech, and so on, that that are going to increasingly need and demand legacy, older generation chips, right? Logic chips, memory chips, um, and many of those are made in China. And many of those are made in Taiwan. And as we see these pressures to localize and to regionalize, that kind of fabrication is going to have to move for a number of reasons. It's not just geopolitics. It's because decarbonization of the global economy is so important, and semiconductor supply chains have massive carbon footprints. So to try and move as much of that ecosystem within a localized, regionalized market is going to become very important. And we're going to see things like carbon taxes on imports that are going to accelerate, the impetus to move to localized manufacturing. So I think for Taiwanese companies, um, in the short term, it's not a very cost-effective prospect for them to move to build a site, for example, in Arizona, when that other entire ecosystem that exists in Taiwan isn't there yet. But from a mid to a long-term perspective, that environment will eventually catch up because the first, second, third tier suppliers, the specialized components of the semiconductor supply chain, will eventually find its way into that new ecosystem. So that means that in the mid to the long term, Taiwanese companies that embed themselves in these new emerging regionalized and localized ecosystems are going to benefit. They're going to become critical players in all of these distinct regions and areas, whether it's Europe, whether it's the United States, whether it's Japan, maybe not so much in South Korea, but other emerging markets. Maybe it's going to be more in Singapore. Israel has a very interesting, tech sector where we could see some very interesting things happen. And even countries like Australia and Canada that are looking very seriously at trying to insert themselves into friend-shoring type arrangements, right? Supply chains amongst trusted partners. Again, Taiwanese companies have an opportunity there to become major players in all these new markets.